The bellboy knocked 3 times before the door opened. December 22, 1946. Hotel Nacional, Havana, Cuba. 9:14 p.m., room 206. The most expensive suite in the most elegant hotel in the Caribbean. The bellboy was 19 years old. His name was Eduardo. He'd been working at the Nacional for 2 years and thought he'd seen everything Havana had to offer. He was wrong. When the door opened, he saw 40 men in tuxedos seated around a dining table large enough to seat a small village. Crystal glasses, imported wine, cigars that cost more than his monthly salary. And at the head of the table, quiet as a man at a business lunch, sat someone Eduardo recognized from a photograph his supervisor had shown him 3 days earlier. This guest, the supervisor had said, tapping the photograph, does not exist. You have never seen him. You do not know his name. You understand? Eduardo understood now. He set down the champagne, kept his eyes on the floor, left as fast as dignity allowed. In the hallway he exhaled. Behind that door, the most powerful criminals in America, men who controlled every major city, every major port, every significant illegal enterprise from New York to Los Angeles, were taking orders from a man the United States government had deported 2 years earlier. A man who was supposed to be finished. Lucky Luciano had called the meeting. Every boss had come, and what was decided in that hotel suite over the next 4 days would shape organized crime for the next 2 decades. To understand what that meeting meant, you need to understand what Lucky Luciano's life had become by December 1946. He'd been deported from America in February 1946. Reward for his wartime cooperation with naval intelligence, Operation Underworld. The government used him, then put him on a ship. Italy was not exile in the romantic sense. It was confinement with better weather. Lucky had no official authority, no territory, no presence in any American city. The FBI monitored his communications. Italian authorities watched his movements. The American press ran stories about how organized crime had finally cut its head off. What nobody reported, what nobody in law enforcement wanted to admit, was that Lucky Luciano had spent 10 months in Italy rebuilding something more powerful than territory, a communications network, trusted couriers moving between Naples and New York, coded correspondence through legitimate business channels, a rotating system of intermediaries so no single line could be traced or cut. By October 1946, Lucky knew more about what was happening inside American organized crime than most bosses knew about their own operations, and what he knew disturbed him. Without a central structure, without commission meetings, without a unifying authority, things were drifting, old conflicts resurfacing, new men making moves that would eventually require expensive corrections. Lucky needed a meeting. The problem was he couldn't enter America, so he made America come to him. Cuba was the solution. Close enough to Miami to reach by short flight, outside American jurisdiction, a government that understood the value of accommodating powerful visitors. Lucky arrived in Havana in October 1946, traveling on an Italian passport under a different name. Checked into the Nacional, the same arrangement. Then the invitations went out. Every major family boss, Frank Costello, Albert Anastasia, Joe Bonanno, Carlo Gambino, Santos Traficante, Maya Lansky, who handled the logistics. The message was simple. Lucky is calling a meeting. Havana, December. Come. Nobody refused. Not because they feared what refusal meant, though some of them did, but because Lucky Luciano had built something over 20 years that transcended fear, credibility. When Lucky called a meeting, it meant something needed to be decided. And when something needed to be decided in their world, Lucky Luciano's judgment was still the most trusted in the room. Frank Costello told his driver, the morning he left for Havana, "The boss is calling." His driver asked which boss. Costello looked at him. "The boss," he said. The first session began December 22nd at 7 p.m., 22 men around the main table, 18 more in adjacent rooms, available if needed. Translators for 2 Sicilian bosses, who preferred not to conduct serious business in English. Lucky sat at the head of the table in a charcoal suit. No jewelry, no theater, just the man. He let everyone settle, let conversations finish, let the room come to him. Then he spoke. "Thank you for coming," he said. Just that. Nothing about the distance they'd traveled, nothing about the inconvenience, no performance, just, "Thank you." The room went quiet in a specific way. The way rooms go quiet when the most important person in them decides it's time to begin. "We have 3 problems," Lucky continued. "I'll take them in order. The first problem was Vito Genovese." Lucky laid it out without emotion. Genovese had been making moves in New York that weren't authorized, absorbing operations that belonged to other families, making alliances without commission approval. acting as though the deportation had created a vacancy at the top. "There is no vacancy," Lucky said. He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. "The commission doesn't have vacancies, it has members. Vito knows this." Albert Anastasia, who had his own complicated history with Genovese, leaned forward. "What do we do about it?" "We send him a message," Lucky said. "Not tonight, after this meeting, through proper channels. He attends the next commission meeting, and he explains his actions to everyone in this room, publicly. And if he doesn't come?" Anastasia asked. "He'll come," Lucky said. A pause. "Why are you sure?" Anastasia pressed. Lucky looked at him. "Because I'm sending the invitation personally." Nobody asked a follow-up question. The second problem was Bugsy Siegel and the Flamingo. This was more delicate. Bugsy was one of Lucky's oldest friends. The Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas was his vision, and the vision was currently $6 million over budget, with no clear path to profitability. Maya Lansky presented the numbers. Precise, painful. "Construction costs are 3 times the original estimate," Maya said, laying papers on the table. "The December 26th opening is happening regardless," Ben insisted. "But the hotel isn't finished. The gambling rooms aren't complete. We're going to open a luxury resort that doesn't yet function as one." Santos Traficante from Tampa spoke first. "How much have we put in?" "Between all families represented here, approximately $5 million, Maya said. The room reacted, not loudly. These men didn't react loudly to numbers, but in the way eyes moved and shoulders shifted. Lucky said nothing for a moment. Then, "Maya, your assessment, honest." Maya looked at his old friend. "The location is right. Vegas will be what Ben says it will be, but not this version. Not yet. The Flamingo needs 6 more months of construction and proper management before it works. And Ben, he's wrong about the timeline and the budget." Lucky looked around the room. "We give it time," he said. "One more chance. If the Flamingo opens and performs within acceptable parameters by spring, we adjust our position. If it doesn't," he stopped. "If it doesn't?" Traficante asked. Lucky picked up his glass, took a slow drink. "Then we make a different decision. Together, as a commission, not individually." The emphasis on the last 2 words landed precisely where he intended. "No single man acts alone on this. Not even me." The room understood. But here's what nobody at that table knew. While they were discussing Bugsy Siegel's hotel, Lucky had already decided something he hadn't yet said aloud. He'd known about the skimming for 3 weeks. Maya had confirmed it quietly before the meeting. Small amounts, not the full missing millions, but enough. Lucky hadn't brought it to the table, not yet, because there was a sequence to these things. First, the public discussion about the hotel, the chance, the official record of patients. Then, if necessary, the private decision. Lucky had learned this from watching bosses who moved too fast, who reacted instead of planned, who let emotion accelerate timelines that should have been allowed to breathe. Maranzano had moved fast. He'd lasted 5 months. Lucky moved at the speed of certainty. The third problem was the most sensitive. A federal informant had been identified inside one of the New York families, not confirmed, not named, but enough intelligence had leaked over the previous year to make the shape of the problem clear. Lucky presented what he knew, without naming suspects, without accusations. "Someone in this room, or close to someone in this room, is talking," he said. The silence that followed was a different kind of silence, not respectful, careful. Joe Bonanno spoke, carefully. "How do we find out who?" "We don't announce that we know," Lucky said. "We feed different information to different people. We wait to see what surfaces where. Whoever it is will identify themselves." "How long?" "As long as it takes," Lucky said. "Patience is the only tool that works here. Anyone who tries to accelerate this will make mistakes." He looked around the room deliberately. "Nobody accelerates this." Clear. Heads nodded, some immediately, some after a beat. Lucky noted both. On December 26th, in the middle of the Havana meetings, something unexpected happened. Frank Sinatra arrived. Sinatra was 31 years old, already famous, already connected to the room in ways that had become publicly uncomfortable for his management team. He came with gifts, bottles of wine, a manner that communicated both genuine affection and careful awareness of where he was. Lucky greeted him warmly, briefly. After Sinatra left to perform for the guests, one of the bosses, never identified in any record, leaned toward Lucky and said, "The papers are going to find out he was here." "Probably," Lucky said. "That causes problems." "For Frank, yes," Lucky said. "Not for us. We were never here." When journalist Robert Ruark published a column about the Havana Conference in February 1947, having received a tip from an unnamed source, he wrote about Sinatra's presence but struggled to confirm Lucky's. Lucky was listed in the article as a rumor. He remained a rumor until a U.S. Treasury agent confirmed his presence to Congress 2 years later. By then, the decisions made in that hotel suite had already been operating for 2 years. The system Lucky built didn't require him to be visible. It required him to be right. The Havana Conference ended on December 26, 1946. Lucky Luciano flew back to Italy the following morning. The American government, tipped by the Treasury agent who'd been monitoring Cuban entry records, pressured Havana to expel him within months. By February 1947, Lucky was back in Italy, permanently. He never held another meeting like Havana. He didn't need to. The decisions made in those 4 days held. The commission structure stabilized. The informant was eventually identified through exactly the process Lucky described. The Bugsy situation resolved itself by June 1947 in exactly the way Lucky had privately anticipated. Eduardo the bellboy left the Hotel Nacional in 1948, moved to Matanzas, raised 3 children, never spoke about what he'd seen in that hallway. Decades later, his daughter found a note in his belongings, written in his handwriting, undated. "I once brought champagne to a room full of kings. I kept my eyes on the floor. I still don't know if that was wisdom or cowardice. But I went home that night, and I kept going home after that. I think that counts for something." Lucky Luciano had been deported, exiled, declared finished, and from a hotel suite in Havana, he'd run the most powerful criminal organization in American history for 4 days like a man who had never left. Because real authority doesn't need an address, it just needs to be obeyed. If this story showed you what power looks like without a throne, hit subscribe. We're uncovering the hidden moments that shaped history, the meetings nobody was supposed to know about, the decisions made in rooms that officially didn't exist. Turn on notifications. Lucky Luciano's reach extended further than any map could show. Drop a comment. Can you ever truly exile a man like Lucky Luciano? Lucky Luciano, 1897-1962, the man who ran America from Cuba, the boss who made every boss come to him, the exile who was never really gone. Rest in power.